peserta sekalian, TMT terbanyak sepanjang sejarah IMSA katanya ya. Ada 22 peserta pada siang hari ini. Mungkin sedikit teknis, nanti setiap peserta maju persen 3 menit. Ada timer juga untuk mengingatkan ketika nanti waktu 1 menit. Setelah itu tidak ada tanya jawab, langsung kembali lanjut ke peserta selanjutnya gitu ya. Sebelum kita mulai, izinkan saya memperkenalkan para juri kita terlebih dahulu. Yang pertama ada seorang ilmuwan tingkat dunia di bidang bioteknologi. Beliau adalah Bapak Muhammad Arif Budiman, PhD. Beliau, ya ini yang paling kanan ya. Beliau meraih gelar di doktor dari Texas A&M. Kemudian sekarang menjadi senior scientist di Orion Genomics Amerika Serikat dan direktur utama PT Orion Bioscience Jakarta. Beliau berhasil memetakan genom padi internasional hingga menemukan gen shell, benar ya Pak, gen shell ya, terobosan revolusioner meningkatkan efisiensi industri sawit dunia. Sawit. Aman. Sawit itu penyumbang GDP terbesar Indonesia ya, jadi harus disupport. Selanjutnya juri kedua ada Dr. Wempi Saputra. Nggak ada tepuk tangan. Beliau adalah tokoh berpengaruh di ekonomi internasional. Beliau saat ini menjabat sebagai Direktur Eksekutif Bank Dunia yang mewakili 11 negara Asia Tenggara, pengalaman lebih dari 3 dekade, memiliki peran krusial dalam reformasi keuangan global dan pembiayaan perubahan iklim. Kemudian selanjutnya, juri kita yang ketiga ada Mbak Nada Adiba. Beliau adalah pakar riset kesehatan masyarakat dari Amerika Serikat. Saat ini menjabat sebagai research scientist di NORC Chicago University. Pengalaman hampir 10 tahun memimpin studi evaluasi kesehatan publik. Kemudian yang terakhir juri kita, Bapak Nur Hidayat Siswo Raharjo. Beliau adalah akademisi dan pakar teknik elektro. Saat ini menjabat sebagai associate professor di University of Tennessee, Amerika Serikat. Baik, sudah selesai perkenalan jurinya. Ini muka-muka peserta terlihat tegang. Oh, perkenalkan diri ya, mohon maaf. Saya MC cadangan. Nama saya Zaki, saat ini saya sedang belajar di Yale University di Connecticut. Oke, kita mulai dengan pantun pemberi semangat dulu ya. Buah kecapi, buah kedondong. Daripada sepi, tepuk tangannya dong. Oke, tidak berlama-lama lagi karena waktu juga singkat. Kita langsung ke peserta pertama, Mas Andra Mika. Persilakan.
Bentar, saya timer dulu. Biar nggak overtime. Enggak, nanti ditegur panitia, katanya kan diskualifikasi, nggak mau lah. Oh, dibesarin dulu, gimana caranya? Oh, nggak tahu, oh, maaf. Ini. Iya, feedback tahun depan, stand up comedy IMSA student. Nah, guys. Mau dibesarin dulu katanya. F11 katanya. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Ya udah ngomong, udah 3 menit berarti. Oh, sorry. Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi semuanya. Mungkin sebelum kita mulai ini karena saya pertama ada burden buat hype the crowd juga. Kita polling dulu deh ya. Quick show of hands, di sini ada nggak yang dalam seumur hidupnya pernah mikirin untuk investasi? Apapun itu, stock, US market, Indonesian market, sukuk mungkin, atau investasi emas dan lain sebagainya. Boleh angkat tangan yang pernah kepikiran at least sekali seumur hidup. Oke, banyak sekali. Boleh hold di atas tangannya? Ya, banyak ya. Sekarang dari ini semua yang at least tahu cara mulai untuk investasi step pertamanya seperti apa? Mungkin boleh hold tangannya di atas. Oke, beberapa tangan turun. Terus berikutnya, yang pede untuk manage portfolio keuangan keluarga sendiri untuk jangka panjang siapa? Saya juga ikut turun. Nah, boleh lihat sekitar ya. Tadi angkat tangannya banyak banget di awal semuanya pengen investasi. Tapi lama-lama keakses turun sedikit, tapi paling turun di merasa pede untuk manage portfolio keluarga sendiri jangka panjang. Sebelumnya perkenalkan, saya Andra, saya lulus MBA di Wharton School tahun ini, sekarang kerja di Fidelity Investments, sebelumnya kerja 7 tahun di fintech, Bapak Ibu, dan saya lihat sendiri bahwa di Indonesia, dan gak cuma di US, Indonesia pun, sebetulnya banyak problem yang muncul karena adanya financial access tanpa diiringi financial literacy. Dan ini mungkin bisa refleksi masing-masing ya, tadi kenapa pada nggak pede, karena mungkin kita bisa mulai dari sini. Kita udah ada yang pernah dengar nggak sih kayak pinjol, kelilit pinjol, terus kelilit jadinya judi online, terus pernah dengar berita ada triliunan rupiah judi online terus ketarik dari pinjol, ada students juga, ada mungkin keluarga yang isinya 5 orang, semuanya kena pinjol. Terus ada juga yang punya akses ke trading app, tapi investasinya FOMO, ngikutin meme stock. Ada stok-stok tertentu yang lagi hype di social media, profit nih, ikut masuk, ternyata down, turun, terus trauma. Terus ada juga yang pernah dengar kayak kripto, kayak ngetrend. Tapi juga sama bentuknya FOMO investing, masuk, terus volatile, naik turun, habis itu ngedown. Nah ini sebetulnya different products, tapi common trends. Bahwa financial access, nggak cuma di Indonesia, itu sebetulnya sudah besar progresnya di Indonesia. Apalagi kalau saya lihat waktu saya masih kecil ya, orang tua saya tuh nyimpan harta kekayaan tuh dalam bentuk cash di lemari. Kenapa? Karena ATM jauh banget. Dulu kami tinggal di Bontang, lumayan rural, nyari ATM tuh lumayan jauh. Tapi sekarang gampang, ada mobile app, langsung deposit dan lainnya. Nah itu isu yang kita lihat di Indonesia, aksesnya tinggi, tapi tidak di hand in hand sama literasi. Nah saya punya mimpi teman-teman. Mimpi saya adalah semua orang punya kesempatan untuk mencapai financial independence. Dan call me naive, call me crazy, tapi itu mimpi yang ingin saya capaikan. Maka dari itu, di sini kami present Vintara yang mendemocratizing wealth management di Indonesia.
Andra, waktunya habis.
Oh udah habis ya, ya udah. Nanti kita ngobrol berlanjut. Tapi aku, ya makanya saya pertama gitu ya. Nanti aku kirim link di grup kalau mau join support group, mau beta testing silakan.
Ini jadi ajang promosi ya ternyata ya. Oke, kita panggil peserta kedua, Mas Fadil Ginting.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Organizing Muktamar requires a lot of effort from so many people. That makes me wonder, how many robots already helping us in Muktamar? 0, right? And does even robots ready yet to help us? Unfortunately, not yet. While alhamdulillah, there are so many wonderful brothers and sisters here are willing to help for Muktamar, there are many jobs in the world that have the problem of labor shortage, especially jobs that are dangerous and require people to be far away from home and families. Robots these days live mostly in factory and controlled settings. In order for robots to help us in Muktamar and many other events, they need to work in unstructured and dynamic environments. While these days robots are already good with seeing and acting, they are not good enough for thinking, reasoning, and decision making. My research focused on enabling reasoning capabilities for robots in unstructured environments. First, I developed semantic reasonings, which is like fast reasoning, reactive, to understand the map of the environments so that the robot can understand human semantic language of the environments, bringing food from the kitchens to the ballroom. Second, I look at how we can do proactive reasoning for the robot to proactively recall past photographic memories, as in the robot has watched all the recordings of past Muktamar events so that they can make a better decisions. And third, I'm looking into contextual reasonings for robots so that the robots can understand rules and regulations from verbal and written context, so that the robots can understand what we have as the rule of conduct in Muktamar and behave accordingly. With a collaboration with a robotic startup, Phil AI, we have developed and deployed these solutions across different industries, starting from our office, where robots helping us to find stuff in the office, in construction environments, where robots helps humans to understand changes over time in the progress of construction, and operating in the oil and gas facilities, where robots understand the operational procedures in such a high-stakes settings. There are so many works in reasoning and in general overall technology of robotics, so that until we have robots that can help us, hopefully inshallah in 10 years, helping in Muktamar and helping us in daily life. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Oh, luar biasa ya. Robot is taking our jobs. So be ready. Pesimis. Oke, kita panggil peserta selanjutnya. Mas Rifki Aulanisa. Oh maaf, sorry. Sorry and move on, I'm sorry. Mbak.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and thank you for having me. I want to start this presentation by something very familiar, that is Sudoku. Do you know Sudoku? I know all of you are greatest students in the States. Of course you know Sudoku. So how to play Sudoku is that you make a guess for every row and column, and then the little boxes inside of the Sudoku must have a number from 1 to 9, no repeats. Now imagine different thing. What if the rows were people and the columns were sensitive information like income, health condition, or exact location? So the Sudoku more or less like a game, but it's more into a serious data privacy concern. So this leads to my main research question here. How much actually data accuracy can society trade for privacy? Because we talk about official statistics, which mean we need to take something like social benefit for the society in across the country. So one of the methods that I'm using here is differential privacy. The key idea is basically so simple. You inject a control noise to the data, and you can measure it by something that called privacy loss budget. The R epsilon, the greater the epsilon or the greater the privacy loss budget, meaning that the data is more accurate, but it's less private or it's less like protected. And we can implement it across the geographical hierarchy from states down to a smaller level of geographical area, in which in official statistics we call it as census block, which contains like a much less society. And I also bring like one of the graph, which is the implementation of the noise data set that being generated from these previous steps. This is like where we measure the marginal social benefit and where it can be equalized with the marginal social cost, and it will be like the effect will be different from the national level to the census block level. So this is my key finding. Differential privacy is best viewed as a promising method within a larger set of the PEDs, which is in the national level, but down into the census blocks, it will the data will more distort. So we need another approach to overcome this. That is, we can use multiple privacy tools such as the zero knowledge proof, synthetic data or data encryption, and my personal pick is the synthetic data. Do you know? Do you want to know, or do you want to? Are you curious why about my pick? Please stay tuned to my future research. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Oh, menarik ya. Data privacy buat anak muda nggak diperlukan ya, karena suka oversharing. Datanya terbuka semua online. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Fahad. Oh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So the topic is about quantum cryptography. So I will explain a little bit about the background of this research. I'm sorry. Before I tell you about the objective of this research, I will explain a little bit about the background. So today we need like very secure communication, but the method that widely used today, which is based on algorithm, it is not enough to make communication secure. So we have a new method. We call it quantum cryptography. So I will explain a little bit the theory about quantum cryptography. So basically here we have two parties, the sender and the recipient. And what really happens is the sender wants to send a single photon. By the way, anybody knows photon? Photon is particle of light. So when the sender wants to send a photon to the receiver, there is one thing which is superior in quantum cryptography, that because it is based on the quantum mechanical phenomenon, theoretically it is 100% secure. If we compare it with the algorithm-based security, this one is superior. Why? Because for the algorithm-based security, let's say if the spy or an eavesdropper, they have like better algorithm, it is easy for them to eavesdrop or to spy the information. But theoretically, quantum cryptography is superior. Why? Because by the time the eavesdropper tries to spy the information, what really happens is, in fundamental theory of quantum mechanics, let's say we have this kind of system. In quantum mechanics, if maybe I think most of you know, like in quantum mechanics, we have theory that if somebody tries to observe something, they disturb the system. By disturbing the system means both the sender and the recipient knows the presence of the spy here. So theoretically, quantum cryptography is 100% secure. So that is why I can say that quantum cryptography is superior in terms of the security. That is the background of this research. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm going to compare the two main quantum cryptography, we call it protocols. So there are two main quantum cryptography protocols. The first one is BB84, which is based on one single photon. And the second one is E91, which is based on entangled photon. So this is what I'm going to compare. But actually, the experiment about the security of BB84 and E91, they have done it. But there is no theoretical, like established theoretical simulation for these two methods. So,
Bang Fahad, waktu habis.
oh. Okay. Sorry.
Mantap ya, kalau belajar cryptocurrency sama Bang Fahad. Oh bukan ya, kriptografi ya. Cryptocurrency sama yang pertama tadi masuk WhatsApp grup ya. Oke, selanjutnya Kak Anissa Fajriani.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to start by inviting you to imagine a woman you know who just gave birth. At the birth facility, she is being told to breastfeed her baby because breast milk is the best. That's what they say. But when she gets home, the reality hits. It's not that simple. It's not as just putting the baby to chest. Breastfeeding needs proper technique. And without it, breastfeeding can feel painful, intimidating, frustrating, and it makes it harder to sustain the milk production and even to continue breastfeeding. And this common problem is reflected in our national data that shows only half of the babies are still exclusively breastfed at 6 months. But the good news is there is a growing number of professionals who can provide personalized assistance to help mothers tackle their difficulties in breastfeeding. These are the support groups and also breastfeeding counselors, but they work in silo. They are entirely separated with the current health system. So, my research aimed to fill the gap by wondering what does it need to connect those two support to make it an ongoing care for mothers to sustain breastfeeding. And I'm trying to do that by two ways. Quantitatively, to collect the data on the existing breastfeeding support resources in the area and to see the distribution. So we will know which area is covered and which are not. And beside that, we will also try to explore which factors is associated with mothers to access those resources. And qualitatively, we'll try to better understand, based on the provider experience and mother's experience, how does it takes and what factors needed to improve this coordination between the birth facilities and the community breastfeeding support resources. In the end, this research really aims to initiate the breastfeeding support system in Indonesia, and hopefully it will give or provide the best start in life for mothers and babies. Thank you.
Wow, very cool ya. Ada di Yale saya belajar tuh, ada salah satu gap terakhir ya antara laki-laki dan perempuan adalah karena breastfeeding itu gitu. Jadi it's a very important issue to be solved. Sorry, I can't make joke about breastfeeding, like just serious stuff. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Siti Rahmatul Laili. Oh, sorry, number 6, my bad. Tadi number 7. Kak Anastasia Citra.
Okay, snaps your fingers if you think that you're beautiful. Nice. Stomp your feet if you think you're not. Okay. And claps if you think everybody in these rooms are beautiful. Thank you so much. So my study, Decolonizing Indonesian beauty standards has become very personal to me because when I was a teenager, I was auditioned to have to be in the singing competitions. But at that time, one judges make a comment about you are too dark to be a singer. So they didn't make a comment about my vocals or performance. So once again, in Indonesia in July 2024, there's one term, aura maghrib, you know that? Become trended online, not only in Indonesia, but globally. That time, Indonesian netizens makes comments about the skin tone of Marion Jola, Fuji, and even one content creator from Sudan, South Sudan, named Dolly Visions. Indonesian netizen made comments, it's not just Maghrib aura, but already Tahajud aura. It shows the evidence that the narrative of beauty in Indonesia is mirroring of Western ideals that beauty has to be white. Okay, so why? Colonization. In colonization, it inherited what we call as colonial matrix of power. And once, it's become a knowledge production to movies and media. But however, we can decolonize it. Why? This is digital spheres. We can use social media. So I did a multimodal discourse analysis to these one content creators with the hashtags of Team Sawamatang is a social movement. In that times, I checked 4 dimensions of psychological proximity when the content feels close to us. So the result is the psychological proximities, its evidence shows in her contents. Salience, like tapping in the Aura Maghrib's news, which is very prominent at that times, and also about knowledge. She mentions about history, about numbers, about the beauty in Indonesia, and also about the relevance. So she makes a comments, a content, and visuals about how relevant her situation with her followers. And also emotional connectedness. When she said that, I know how you feel, this also happens about me. And the last part is about empathy, when she shows like suggestions, and I know how you feel, and the motivations. So this study is very important, not only academically, but practically for you guys to be content creators, or probably for beauty industries. Why? Because in beauty industries, they can make a social movement to decolonize the Indonesian beauty standards. But most importantly, it's in your hands. It's in your hands to change this narrative. Thank you so much.
Mantap. Tim Sawo Matang, mana suaranya? Saya sawo kematangan. Oke, selanjutnya yang tadi ya, maaf. Nomor 7, Kak Siti Rahmatul Laili.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone. So I'd like to present my undergrad thesis. This is about the meaning of Wasiah and Surah Al-Asr. First, I'd like to ask everyone here, have you ever noticed that in every Islamic gatherings, and even here in Muktamar, the Muslim scholars, even the committee, reading the Surah Al-Asr in the end of their speech? Have you ever noticed that? And I believe that all of us here memorize this surah when we are a little. But have you ever still hesitate to give an advice to your friends or maybe someone in social media? Because you might think that when you give advice to them, when you saw them doing something bad, you might sound too preachy or sounds overly religious. You might feel that. So that's why this is my research about to answer this. I try to look up into the Surah Al-Asr which we recite all the time, and I'm not only look up into dictionaries, but I look up into semantic theory from the philosopher from Japanese called Toshiko Izutsu. So in this case, I try to look up into two framework first by try to look up into the basic meaning. First, the word tawasau came from the root word wawu, sod, and ya. It came from the pattern of Arabic wasya. It came from the Arabic tafa'ala, which means strong connection, and that's how the word came from. And after that, in Indonesia, if you ever guys notice that the word wasya sometimes related to inheritance of wealth, but in Arabic, that's not only about wealth. So my research is that there is a shift meaning in Arabic of the word wasya in Indonesia. So basically, the word wasya is not only about inheritance of meaning. It's about giving advice. It's like you're giving your last will. So there are three things you can do when you're about to give an advice to your friends. First, it's like you're giving your will. Give it, say it to your friends tenderly. Say it like you're giving advice, like you're giving your last will to them. And secondly, you need to do it again and again, because this is tawasaw. Do it tawasaw bil haq, tawasaw bil sabr. Do it again and again with sabr. And I think that's my research. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make jokes about the Quran, right? Yeah, that's fine. Ya, kita sudah di sepertiga peserta ya, so far sudah 7. Masih semangat semua? Tebak-tebakan dulu. Tadi presentasi tadi semua bisa dipercaya. Ada warna yang tidak bisa dipercaya. Ada yang tahu warna apa? Wah, warna blue. Belum tentu benar. Garing banget jokes saya. Oke. Sedikit icebreaker. Selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Muhammad Fakhrusi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Does any of you familiar with how robot learns? So to explain that, let's imagine a little kid. We use this. A hand, a similar thing that we have, human tissue. So the way we grab stuff is we take things for granted. Like, for example, I'm grabbing my phone like this. We don't think about it. It just happens. But we cannot do that to robots. Robots need to be carefully, told. For example, in the case of soft robot, we need to apply different pressure to each finger. And because it's a delicate machine, it's a soft robot, delicate machine. So every time we apply the same pressure to all of its finger, it can be, result in a different way because it's not deterministic. It's not replicable. So when we want to teach the robot how to grip something, like, it may fail like that. Like it's a hard process, long process. So the way we make it faster is, again, by introducing word foundation physics to the robot. For example, we give the robot information, like if we apply different pressure, the robot will bend certain way. And that word foundation, physics foundation, will make the robot learn faster, which will help faster research and development. And that's how you make robots learn faster. Thank you.
Yeah. Robots as like imaginary kids, right? But don't teach your kids like that, like, put blindfold on them, like it's crazy. Next, kita panggil Kak Radian Pribadi.
Teachers are the cornerstone of every education system. Yet we know that teachers, they don't only teach in a class, they also learn. They also engage in professional development. However, according to OECD Teaching and Learning International Survey, 63% of teachers say that time presents a barrier to their professional development. So it is important for us to know how teachers can allocate their time because their time is very scarce. we are going to use OECD Program for International Assessment, or PISA data 2022 in Australia. Why Australia, you ask? Because Australia present a comprehensive data on PISA, and then Australia also is suffering for a decrease in PISA mathematics scores. So we want to know what kind of interventions might matter for them. And then we want to see how teachers spend the proportion of their professional development time in mathematics pedagogy is actually related to student math outcomes. So in PISA, they actually ask the teachers, okay, from out of this time, how many % do you spend in learning mathematics? How many time do you spend in mathematics pedagogy or the art of teaching mathematics? And then we see if there is any relationship between how much in proportion teachers spend their time in mathematics pedagogy and the student outcomes. And we find that there is a significant relationship. But well, maybe you can ask, well, what about, maybe it's because of the socioeconomic status. Maybe it's because the school is private schools. Maybe it's because there are more experienced teachers. So we ran another multivariate regression, and then we found that even after controlling for those variables, the relationship is still significant. And then lastly, we find if there is a difference in this relationship between public and private schools, and we find that there is no difference between in the private and public schools. So what does this mean? Number one, so for researchers, this is just a correlation, not causation. So we want to call for further causal inference investigations. For example, maybe running a randomized control trial with mandatory professional development as the treatment. For teachers, your professional development time matters. And lastly, for school leaders and policymakers, this is a call for us to pay more attention in supporting teachers' lifelong learning. Because when our teachers learn, our students learn better. Thank you.
Oh, jadi nggak ada bedanya ya, public sama private school ya. Jadi di public school aja lebih murah. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Raihan Lutfianto.
Before we dive into the topic, has anyone here never used an Uber or Lyft? Right? Has anyone ever heard of Waymo or taken one maybe? If you know one? Cool. So that's our future in terms of transportation industry. But even with that growth, there's some concerning data here that people, becoming more older and older. In the US alone, people are getting more obese. Like obesity is a serious problem now. That leads or means that more vulnerable people will ride in the back, in the rear seat. So the question really is, what if our usual seat belt, like the one that we have in the back of our car, wasn't really designed for our body? That's really the question that I'm trying to explore in this study. So basically what I did is I took numerous subjects here, diverse subjects, so they have different BMI, different stature, different age, and everything. And I put them to sit in the back virtually, so not physically. Because I can do as many impact as I want if I wanted to. So using this numerical simulation, then I predict how bad the injury is gonna be. I calculate the injury risk of it. And there's a good news, of course. The good news is our regular belt is not bad at all. But what if we introduce more sophisticated system? In this case, more advanced belt and even an airbag. So it turns out it can even more reduce the injury risk up to 42%. That's a huge number, meaning people will be safe. But there is a huge gap here that we know that the population are diverse, right? They different in body sizes and shapes. But these benefits, this 42% are not shared equally. So because, we interact differently with the system. Like small person would, of course, react differently in a crash situation. So there's still a gap. And that's why here a recommendation is, of course, to try to implement that technology. We already have it even though this is an example from the Mercedes-Benz, and I'm not driving a Mercedes-Benz yet, by the way. And to further implement that, I also called this to a regulatory program to further enforce this regulation so that we have safety for all. Thank you.
Oke. Susah jok saya. Seat belt. Jadi kalau teman-teman di Indonesia biasanya kita nggak pakai seat belt ya. Jadi simulasinya nggak valid tuh mas. Harus disimulasi nggak pakai seat belt gimana? Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Mahbub Rido Maula.
Enggak dong, enggak dong. Nah. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone, my name is Mahbub Maula and this is my research paper about bike infrastructure. Next, so how many people agree that cars is the main problem of traffic? Do you? Okay. Yeah, and then how many people that agree that bike can solve this problem? Okay, yes, many. But how many of you that doubting this solution? Okay, at the same time we doubt that. Even if like, yeah, we're taught like it could be, but I don't know. So this research paper wants to like see, is this really a solution to urban problem? Next, so I use agent-based modeling, which look into some agents. So this is, you can see red and blue that represent bikes and cars. So, and then there's green and gray area that represent road and bike lanes. So in this case, we look into agent behaviors as commuters, whether they can choose to use cars or bikes based on the congestion, based on how long they can arrive at the destination, and then like they will make it every time they return to home, they change whether use cars or bikes. And then next, so I use 3 scenario. First, commuter. So this scenario is like testing the variables, which variables is like very important to affect the solution of bike lanes, from the population, from the proportion of bike lanes, and from whether the bike lanes has protection, like the bar, or like you can see in Jakarta, very concrete protection, or not unprotected at all. Next. So the key findings is first, bike lanes is effective for solving the congestion if you have a minimum population density. So if there's no a density, or like in rural area, it's not very effective, but it could be more effective in more urbanized area because you will experience the congestion, and you can only you can get a very significant effect of the bike lanes, like 30%, when you give only 20% of the street space for bikes. So you don't have to make all of them like 4 bike lanes. And the last one, you need protected bike lanes only for car favorable city. So if you live in a car-oriented city, and you want to reduce the car congestion, air pollution, you must have the protection for the bike lanes to make people move from cars to bike. Lastly, next, the policy implication is, first, you have to reinforce more bike lanes in urbanized area, reallocating significant amount, like 20% for bike lanes, and limited for protected bike lanes. Thank you. Oh.
Ya, sepeda ya. Sepeda satu masalah lagi mas sebenarnya. Sepeda di Amerika itu suka hilang ya. Itu masalahnya sebenarnya. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Eka Oktavia Kurniati.
We are here coming to a big city with a lot of building, and we are staying in the 28th floor hotel. But anyone know what material we use to build this hotel? Yes, concrete, right? So in Indonesian language, it's beton. Cement is a main component of concrete. Without cement, we cannot make concrete. But anyone know that cement contributes 7% of global carbon dioxide emission? Yeah, that's a huge problem. So that's a problem we want to answer by finding alternative material. And at the same time, in another industry, mining industry, we have same problem, but it's about the mining waste, especially for copper mining, because I'm studying in Arizona. So copper is the main product of the mining industry. And in Arizona itself, there are 17.5 billion tons of copper tailing. And 1 kilogram of copper tailing can generate around 1 or 200 kilogram of copper tailing. Now I want to find the solution because copper tailing is also hazardous. It can contaminate water and soil, and also it can spray it around that can harm our respiratory system. So how if we can combine two problems into one solution? So I want to use copper tailing as a partial cement replacement. So I want to include the copper tailing in concrete mixture. And I grabbed some sample from Arizona, grabbed copper tailing from Arizona. I did material characterization and testing. The purpose of material characterization and testing is to get to know if the concrete is suitable to be used in concrete or not. It's like we make a friend or find living partner. If we match each other, then kita bisa datang ke rumah, right? So yeah, and the results show that the chemical component can pass the limit requirement, 70% based on the standard, and also the strength can still be classified as high-strength concrete. And lastly, regarding the carbon dioxide footprint, I calculate that if we use 10% of copper tailing, we can save or reduce 3% of carbon dioxide emission with the same strength level as conventional concrete. So the further impact of this research, we can use copper tailing to reduce amount of mining waste, and we can reduce the carbon dioxide emission due to cement production. And lastly, we can save our money, cost, to produce low-cost material by reusing mining waste. So we can implement this research to Indonesia because Indonesia has a lot of mining sites, right? So yeah, thank you so much.
Ya, jadi tambang tidak selalu jahat ya. Bisa menurunkan carbon footprint juga ternyata. Oh, tarik tambang. Boleh. Masuk. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Syarifah Ismailiyah Al-Atas.
Assalamualaikum everyone. So my name is Syarifah Ismailiyah Al-Atas and you can call me Lia. And I'm very tired of the debate old versus new, the traditional or vernacular versus the technology. So as if the innovation alone can solve the climate change. But, we've already hit by the reality that the Sumatra flood, just happened last week or last month. What happening in Sumatra, the flood, the landslide, and then the displacement. The nature isn't waiting for us to finish the debating, and nature is already responding. Nature already has the memory of everything that is our vernacular identity, our culture is built, okay? So maybe the real question isn't what is new, but what have been forgotten from our culture, right? So in my research, I asked one simple but powerful question, hopefully, that is, what if climate resilience is not invented, but it's remembered, right? Across Indonesia, 1,000 island communities have been adapting to floods, earthquakes, monsoons, and heat for centuries. For example, when flood came, the building or the house rises, and then when wind shifts, the walls breathe, And then when the earth moves, the structure flex, not break, with the wood structure, wood construction, or bamboo or anything. And this is not accidental design, okay? This is environmental intelligence passed down through culture. So I call this approach as vernacularizing sustainability. It means rebalancing how we design for climate resilience, from universal metrics to place specific adaptation, from efficiency-centered, only biometric, to continuity-centered design, and from top-down planning to the community-rooted frameworks. So how many of you use already AI every day? ChatGPT every day? Your bestie, right? Okay, so why not we use that as a model and then to bridge everything between old and new, between what we've already knew from the culture, from the vernacularity, to the modern world that we can model each other, okay? I mean, like to build the best environment for us. And then in my research, I connect global resilience theory like IPCC frameworks with Indonesian vernacular architecture, such as the rumah panggung, and then joglo, and everything that we've already know from the culture. And we collect the data through the AI, through the system called Sustain Light. And then the technology that, like AI and building information modeling, can help us model and preserve this knowledge, but only if it listens before it calculates. So we have to listen first. We have to remember what we've already know from the culture. And then so the future of climate resilience design may not lie only in smarter algorithm, but in deeper memory, right? Because the future is not just innovative. Wait, the future is also ancestral. Thank you, everyone.
Oke. Jadi dari dulu ternyata Indonesia sudah banjir ya. Jadi tidak perlu menjadi bencana nasional ya. Cukup jadi bencana lokal aja. Oke. Selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Alif Ilham Madani.
Imagine you are a disaster response coordinator in Indonesia. A massive flood just hit. To save lives, you need to know exactly where the water will flow next. To predict that, you don't need a flat map. You need elevation data. You need to know the height of every hill and the depth of every valley. So now we actually have millions of satellite photos of the Earth available for free dating back decades. But here's the problem. Those photos are flat. They contain zero elevation information. So you might think, don't we already have elevation maps? Yes, we do, but for many developing nations, the data is decades old. To update them, we need expensive laser scanners. Therefore, my research asks, can we teach AI to generate the third dimension from flat photos? I used a partnership between two AIs, the artist and the critic. The artist looks at a flat photo and to generate the elevation map. The critic then judges it. If it looks fake, the artist tries again. I then added a quality control stage to filter out noisy examples. So the model learns only from high quality landscapes. So the result, as you can see on the slide, on the left is the input, a 2D satellite image. On the right is the output, a detailed elevation model generated by the model. So it captures steep peaks, jagged ridges with high accuracy, while it still faces certain challenges in flat areas. For rugged terrain, it generates elevation data essentially for free. So back to the flood. Because we used standard imagery dating back decades ago, we can watch how the Earth changed. We can see how riverbeds have shifted, how mountains have eroded over 40 years. We're not just taking a snapshot, we're tracking the history of the terrain to predict which communities are safe, which are in danger. So, which are in danger, and yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Oke. Tadi Mas Alif itu peserta ke-14 ya. Jadi masih ada sepertiga lagi, 8 peserta lagi. Masih semangat semua, masih semangat? Tebak-tebakan garing lagi. Sayur apa yang dingin? Sayur yang dingin. Benar ya. Kembang cold, garing banget ya, oke. Kembang cold. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil ya, sepertiga peserta terakhir. Peserta nomor 15, Kak Ainul Afifi.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm Fifi, and I'm from Rice University, from the energy capital of the world, Houston, Texas. Can I see a show of hands? Who's from Texas? Anybody? Okay, howdy, y'all. All right. So I'm going to talk about demystifying geological potential. Basically, I want to unravel the secrets beneath the Earth's surface, and we want to find where's the best place to drill for CO2 to pump CO2 into the ground. So next. This is the flow. I want to start with the problem I want to solve, and then I'll show how my thesis will help solve this problem and the contributions. Next, so the higher the GDP of a country, we can see that the higher the red regions show the higher CO2 emissions. So if you can see here, our peers, like Malaysia has 7.04 billion, you can play the video, and you can also see the number of CO2 emissions that are increasing as the higher the GDP is in countries. So ideally, we want to reduce the CO2 global emissions. So if we can see, Indonesia is also at 17.42 billion tons, and we want to tackle this problem, right? So if we go to the next slide, we can see how, if you can imagine the world having a fever. In 2023, the world's global temperature rose to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this is a huge problem. And what is the oil and gas industry doing to tackle this problem? Yeah, so you can see the subtitles in Indonesia. So Pertamina, this is taken from Pertamina, has introduced a concept called carbon capture, utilization, and storage, where you ideally suck all the CO2 and pump it back into the ground. So if you see next, you can see this is how, to the next slide, you can see how oil and gas industries are trying to capture all the CO2 into the ground. And we're talking about we're also going to talk about the net zero carbon emissions by 2050, all right? So that's the major target we want to contribute to. Next. Okay, this is how it looks like when you pump CO2 into the ground. Oil and gas industries have the option to use depleted oil and gas reservoirs, but we're going to talk more about the saline aquifers in the first option. Okay, moving forward. Now let's get into the real deal. Okay, so you know how doctors use ultrasound to scan for babies, right? So similarly, next, we can use this seismic data to scan the Earth for where to pump a CO2 storage. All right, so next, if you imagine a blurry image, it's not good quality, so you need to enhance the higher resolution, right? Okay, so this is my contribution. I introduced this innovative workflow using CNN. Okay, and then you can imagine like you use Instagram filter to upgrade your pictures before you post them, right? So this is the seismic attribute analysis, next, that I used. So these attributes are using quantitative geophysical measures. And so I use the spectral decomposition to enhance the features. Okay, moving forward, this is also using machine learning approach. And how does this implement CO2, the best feature? Next is by finding the best site underground so that we can prevent the CO2 from leaking to the surface. Why is it harmful to leak to the surface? Because it could go into the water that we drink. Okay, so this is geological de-risking. So next, basically these are my results. On the right here is the better images shown in the deeper section. So that's where we would ideally want to drill into CO2, the CO2 into the ground. Okay, so finally, I just want to show this is the impact. I'm contributing towards SDG goals and also the target of net zero carbon emissions. And finally, to conclude, I've reached the objective. And lastly, these are my contributions. So thank you so much for listening. Assalamualaikum.
Oke, selanjutnya kita undang pembicara kita semalam, sekarang peserta. Mbak Kak Magfira Ramadhani. Ngeri.
Uh, Good morning, everyone. So let me ask you this. Did anyone know what their thermostat setting is at home? The thermostat setting? Okay, everyone knows? Okay. So in this research, I will be using data from smart thermostat in California. So when there is a extreme event, for example, like extreme heat, right? This extreme event creates an extreme scarcity in electricity market because everyone is using their AC. They want to be warmer. They want to be colder in their house. They set their thermostat settings down, right? But we don't want it when it's extreme heat because then everyone using it and there is not enough capacity to generate electricity. Otherwise, we'll have outage happens, right? So we as economists, what we do is first, what about we just pay them to reduce their electricity, right? That's one thing. But it turns out people are not really paying attention to their prices. So then what we do is we combine it with automation. So let's make them decide first and then the technology override it automatically. So that's the first part. But sometimes it's not effective. And the last resort is we just ask people to conserve electricity. So basically it's kind of like a pro-social behavior. If you conserve electricity, then you'll contribute in avoiding the outage, right? So what we're gonna look at here is the 10 days of heat wave in September 2022 in California. So during these 10 days, the California government asks you to conserve electricity by setting your thermostat higher from 4 to 9 p.m. every day for 10 days, okay? And then what happened on the 7 days, on September 6th, they sent out an alert that looks like an Amber Alert, but it says that if you don't conserve electricity, we'll have a massive power outage in California. So that's kind of increased the salience of the event, right? So what I'm gonna do here is I will compare the behavior of household in California that received this request repeatedly for these 10 days, right? And some of them actually receive financial incentive to conserve in some hours, and compare it with household that doesn't receive it at all, but still are exposed to this extreme heat wave. And here's what I find. So first, I find that people are actually responding in the first day, but then after they receive it more and more, their response is much less. And then when they receive this alert, it increases the salience, which then makes them respond much higher, right? So there's this habituation, reactivation, and then inattention where when there's no longer a heat wave, but they keep their thermostat there. And the second finding that I find is that this crisis salience and automation is actually complementary. So we make the technology works, but we still need human to allow it to work, right? So with increased salience, people are aware that their action matters so that they're not overriding it back when they feel the discomfort. And the last thing I find is when I link household preference to electricity demand models in a welfare modeling, I find that the reduction in electricity demand is substantial. It's 1.3 gigawatts of electricity, which is compared to like a medium-sized power plant. But what's interesting is all this automated household only contributes to 10% of those.
Habis
right?
waktunya Bang Abi.
Okay, thank you.
Oke, serem ya di California. Termostat data kita diambil sama PhD ini. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Habibah Agianda.
When Carter's dad asked me in clinic, what is the future of my son? Would he be able to walk or would he be wheelchair bound for the rest of his life? I couldn't answer. Carter is a 5-year-old boy with hereditary spastic paraplegia. He is a cheerful young boy, but unfortunately, HSP or hereditary spastic paraplegia is a rare neurological disease that affects neurons that affects movement. So doctor, if it's so rare, why is it so important to learn about it? One is because Allah created anything not in vain. So understanding this HSP actually helps us understand other neurodegenerative conditions, even healthy individuals. And second, I want you now to move your feet and then dangle your legs. And now imagine tomorrow you wake up and your legs are so stiff and you're not able to walk them. And it's painful. And next week you're even actually wheelchair bounded. And next month you're bedridden, unable to go to Muktamar. So if HSP has been identified since 1888, why do we not have the cure for the disease? Why those parents come to us with certain unclarities? This is because there's a lack of biomarker. Biomarker is something that is measurable in blood to understand the disease activity of these patients. We know that SAD nerve cells release proteins to the blood. So my thesis question actually asks, what if we could measure these proteins in the blood to know the disease severity and progression in our patients? We leverage the same method that we use for newborn screening method. Are you all here millennials or Gen Zs? So you might not remember, but when you were born, actually you got this screening test to know your condition. So use the same method, and alhamdulillah, within the 1 year, we've sampled 100 patients across the United States. And this is very nice because we can now use a scalable method and we can then identify biomarkers to then help the very questions that patients ask and families ask in clinic. What is the future of my son? And inshallah, will not only help clinicians guide their clinical trials, but also give them clear answers and realistic hope. I'm Habiba. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Yeah, I got nothing to jokes about that. Like it's hard. It's important topics ya. Kita panggil saja selanjutnya peserta nomor 18, Kak Nisrina Nurika Agustin.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I'm a committee, but I feel like it's a bit unethical to join, but I just want to share you my research about like how we use educational assessment to actually find a partner in life. So I'm a psychologist, so I have a lot of like a client ask me like, oh, how to find a partner that is trustworthy, or how to find a partner that is like have a emotional maturity. I mean, I also want to have that kind of partner. So I'm thinking, okay, what should we do? And then since I'm an educator as well, so I realized that actually there's so many principles in educational assessment that is related to how we assess people. Let's say I'm a teacher, right? When I came to the class, I will have a lot of like a syllabus. I will define what kind of the goal of my class, right? So that's a simple thing. So I realized that, oh, actually that can be applied when I go on the first date with a guy. So I will define what kind of criteria of the guy that I want. That's the first thing. So that's when you, as a teacher, that's when you decide, okay, you have a criteria, you have the norm. You realize that, oh, I expect someone to pay on the first date. If I ask something that on a different culture, maybe that's considered rude. So I need to realize, oh, okay, from this culture, I need to know that they will not pay on the first date. So I will cross them. I'm sorry, I need to be paid. So, and then that's, I mean, I'm be honest, I'm just gonna be honest. So that's the first thing, I realized that. And then when I do assessment in teacher, we have to have a valid and reliable assessment. We have to make sure that our assessment is measuring exactly what we want to measure. So that's when come the validity. You can scan this code. This will give you to this website that I made in Notion. So first, basically what you will do, you will define what's the criteria, and then you take note. So it's like a deep behavioral assessment. Hopefully in the future I can, like put it in a Python, or so I can handle a lot of data. But right now it's just like a simple data gathering. But in the future it can be more complex, so we can know exactly what kind of partner we are getting. So maybe in the next year we can collaborate with the matrimonial committee to do that. I don't know. I'm just proposing the idea. So that's all from me. If you like the idea, you can scan the code here, or you can ask me after this. I mean, I'm open to discussion. Thank you so much.
Oh, hati-hati ya. Dengan Mbak Astri hati-hati kalau ngobrol. Lagi di-assess nanti jangan-jangan. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil peserta nomor 19, Kak Saif Haris Alhaq.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, nice to see you all. I want to start this presentation with the question: Who have experience to ride an electric vehicle in Indonesia or here? Yeah, here maybe. Yeah, and the next question is: Do you think that the electric vehicle is really 100% clean energy in terms of environmental impact? No, right? Yeah, I think you'll know the answer. So our current problem is the climate constraints that hurdle us, that current conventional energy has, that because it affects the environmental and it damages the environment, right? It creates a carbon that creating a global climate change and then the other environmental pollution. And then the conventional energy source also has a big carbon footprint. This carbon thing is really important to the creating a climate change. And it also has a sustainability crisis because the oil, the coal, and other conventional energy that massively used right now is a finite energy. So it's not sustainable. So what is the solution? The solution, one of that is the DMA, dimethyl ether. So what is DMA? DMA is basically it is an organic compound that coming from our atmosphere. It contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's it. So it's plenty in our atmosphere. And it has many benefits. It has a carbon neutrality. It can doing a direct conversion from the carbon waste, such as carbon dioxide or carbon oxide, that coming from conventional engine combustion and other pollution. And it can be generated into the DMA. And then it also has a green production in the process. So it could be 100% clean, not only in the use, but also in the production. Not like our battery in electric vehicle that use rare earth mineral that creating a catastrophic impact to the environment. So the DMA is the answer for the sustainable energy in the future. Thank you.
Oke. Ya, kita tinggal 3 peserta terakhir ya. Masih semangat semua? Aduh, susah jokesnya tadi, agak susah ya. Mungkin jadi kalau punya Tesla berarti bukan yang paling green ya. Jadi jangan ngejudge orang yang pakai ICE gitu ya. ICE, internal combustion engine maksudnya. Oke, selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Lisa Justisia. Nggak ada? Kak Lisa. Nggak ada? Oke, kita skip. Selanjutnya kita panggil Kak Ashifa Isfari.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, judges. As you can see, my slide is very colorful. So, people who have lived in Indonesia before? Cool, yes, so this is going to be relevant. I was afraid it's not going to be relevant. Imagine two public schools in Indonesia. They have the same curriculum, almost the same resources, and almost the same funding every year from the government, but they have very different outcomes. Why? Why is that? What could be the difference? Okay, probably the headmasters. Now, to deep dive into that, I want somebody to answer this question on the left. What is the significance of this law? Undang-Undang Nomor 22 Tahun 99. Okay, so this is the law that determines the shift of power from national to local government. So following this law and its amendments, education, health, and public infrastructure are now part of the authority of local governments, no longer national governments. And how big is the scale? Can somebody tell me the significance of these numbers? 38, 98, and so on? No? So these are the numbers of local leaders that we elect every 5 years. Every 5 years, we elect 38 new governors, 98 new mayors or wali kota, 416 new bupati. And so in total, every 5 years, we don't elect just new vice presidents or new president for that matter. We also elect more than 550 local leaders. And these leaders are important. They decide who are the local headmasters of our local schools. And those headmasters decide if the school is going to perform well or not. Wow, only 1 minute left. Okay, so I'm just going to take this opportunity to implore my fellow Indonesian to pay more attention to our local governments. I'm going to tell one story that I heard when I was in the Ministry of Education, which is about a policy called Green Schools. So there was a policy called Green Schools, and you might imagine that it was to make the schools more energy efficient, right? To make the schools more environmentally friendly. But what happened was the local governments failed to supervise it very carefully so that the schools failed to translate that policy. So what instead happened was the school was painted green. Yeah, that happened. So people, let's care more about our local government. On the next election, know your DPD, know your DPRD, know your governor, mayor, and bupati, and pay more attention to them. In fact, if you see something bad happen, don't just blame the ministers, don't just blame Prabowo or Gibran, also blame your local government. Thank you very much.
Oke. Berani. Iya, jadi kalau ada yang suka live TikTok, backgroundnya hijau itu jangan-jangan green itu maksudnya ya. Oke, peserta terakhir, the ultimate partisipan nih. Mas Dimas Husemahu. Oh.
After graduating with my bachelor's degree, I decided to become an English teacher at Islamic elementary schools. However, it was somewhat challenging. It was a bit difficult for me because I had to balance English proficiency and Islamic values at the same time. In addition, many English books don't reflect student faith and cultural background. Instead, they tend to promote Western culture. For instance, Thanksgiving, holidays, Western food and drinks, and lifestyles that feels disconnect from student everyday lives, right? So next, last year, I designed an Islamic-based English model that has been implemented in 2 schools, especially at Mid Mutiara Bangsa in Maluku and Cendekia Ambon elementary schools. So the question, why do we have to integrate English and Islamic values? Why it is important? Because teaching English is not only about the language, but it is about lifestyle, cultural background, and identity that makes students feel seen, feel heard, and feel supported. Because the content aligns with their daily lives. Research has shown that student motivation to learn English is influenced by their religions and cultures, which can help or sometimes make it harder for them to learn a new language. So understanding these factors is really important for us. It's really crucial for us to help our children, to help our students learn English without losing their identity, without losing who they are. So this project, I use design-based research. At this stage, I focus on designing and implementing learning materials in Islamic classroom that accommodate student aspiration and backgrounds. So, but in the future, I plan to evaluate this model by looking at student score, teachers' feedback, and student engagement. All in all, this book is really good for your future children, guys. If you want your children have a strong faith and also have a good communication in global language. Thank you.
Mantap. Tadi bukunya warna hijau ya, sama ya, green berarti. Oke, dengan berakhirnya presentasi Mas Dimas, berakhir pula acara TMT kita pada siang hari ini. Sedikit pengumuman sponsor ya, jadi hadiahnya juara 3 mendapatkan $200, juara 2 mendapat $225 dan juara 1 mendapat $250. Hadiah dipersembahkan oleh Atase Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan Kemendikbudristek dan Muktamar IMSA. Pengumuman pemenang akan diumumkan pada acara Entertainment Night Jumat besok jam 8 malam. Jadi masih ada waktu kalau mau lobby-lobby jurinya mungkin bisa digeser posisinya ya. Oke, saya Zaki sebagai MC undur diri. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Chick, kindly reminder for all IMSA students participants that we will have panel discussion after the lunch in this room. So please come back to this room and we will have a discussion with a theme of. So the panel discussion will talk about the global minds and national future role of Indonesia student and diaspora in the US with all of the great speakers and also keynote speech. Thank you.